Okay, welcome back. Today we're going to be dealing with Java data types. And in particular, we're going to be dealing with four Java data types: string, char, int, and double. The string data type we've already dealt with. The string data type can be a string of characters of any length, including a blank string. A string with no characters is still a string. Then there's the char data type, which must be a single character. Now, by a single character, we mean it can be a letter A, B, C, can be a number 1, 2, 3. It can be a plus sign, it can be a dollar sign, it can be anything, but it has to be only one. Then we have the int data type, which is an integer, and an integer is a number without a decimal place, so 1 would be an integer, 200 would be an integer, -3 would also be an integer. Negative numbers are allowed to be integers. Then we have the double, and the double is a number that can have a decimal place. It's not required to have a decimal place. So 1 could be a double, 1.1 would be a double, negative 0.342 could be a double. So these are all valid double numbers. So let's get started with how we would get these numbers from the user and what we would do with them. We have our reader variable of the scanner class created from our previous program. So let's start out with getting a string from the user. I've got the code set up. I'm going to paste it in here. Okay, here we are. Get a string from the user. We're going to give the user a prompt, type a word. We'll use the next line method of the reader to get the string. We're going to put it into the variable s, string variable s, and then we're going to print it out by saying you typed plus s. Now, the plus sign can be used to add two numbers together. It can also be used for what's called concatenation. Concatenation is when you have a string and you add another string to it. So let's see what happens when we run this. I'm going to compile it, and we're going to run it. It says type a word, hello, and it says you typed hello. Just what we wanted it to do. Okay. Now let's say we wanted to get a character from the user, just a single character. Well, I've got some code already set up to do that. There we go. Now I've got a comment here. We're going to get a single character from the user. Now we're going to use the next line method to get the input, but remember that the next line method returns a string. So what we need to do is get the first character from the string and put that into our character variable. To get the first character, we use a method called char@, with a parameter of 0. What that means is get the first character from the string, get the character that's at position 0. Remember that in Java, all arrays start with the 0. So the first item in the array is the 0th item. The second is item number 1. It's something you're going to have to get used to, and we'll be discussing that further. But for example, if I have a string with the let's say I put in this is a string. If the user puts in this value, the very first character is going to be the T, and that's going to be the character number 0. Alright, so anyway, we prompt the user, type a single character. and then we're going to get the next line, which is a string, and get the first character from that string, which is the character 0. And finally, we're going to print out the result with U typed plus C. Remember, plus is used to concatenate the character C to this string. Let's see how this works. Compile it and run it. Okay, so the first thing is it's asking me to type a word. Now it's asking me to type a single character. I could type a single character, or I could type a word and it will only take the first character of that word. So I typed an H. Let's run this again and see what happens if I do something else. Okay, now it's asking me to type a word. What if I hit enter here? What will happen? It says you typed and then there's nothing. Remember that a string can be a blank string. A string variable that has no characters in it is still a valid string. It's just an empty string. What happens if I press enter here when it's looking for a character? I get an error. Why do I get an error? Because if I have a blank string and I try to get the first character from that string, well, there is no first character, so it's going to give me an error. So in this situation, the user must type something or it will generate an error. Now there are ways to handle errors and prevent users from getting error messages because we don't want that to happen in real life, but for now we just know that you have to type something at that prompt. Okay, moving right along. Let's deal with the integer data type. So the user is being asked to type an integer, and we have an integer variable called I, int I, and we're using the next int method to read the integer and assign it to the variable I. Now we're going to print out you typed plus I, and remember, this is doing concatenation, it's not doing addition. It's just going to take the number you printed in, you typed in, and it's going to add it to you typed. We're going to compile this and run it. Okay, so let's just say hello here, hello here. Now it's looking for an integer. Let's type 300. And it says you typed 300. That's perfect. Now I want to test out just the integer input, and I want to skip the other stuff that I've put in. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to comment out this code. There. Now I've commented out the code that asks for a word and a character, and it's just the integer. This is a way of helping you debug code, is you can temporarily comment out the code that you don't want to run so that you can concentrate just on what you do want to run. So I'm going to compile that. I'm going to run it, and it skips directly to type an integer. How about if we put in a negative number? Let's type negative 300. It liked that. Let's run it again. Let's try putting in 3.1. Oh, that was an error because an integer cannot have a decimal place. Let's run it again. What happens if I just hit enter? It keeps asking me for a number. It's not going to stop until I put in a number. So I'll put in 200. There it is. Okay, so we've got the integer stuff working. What if we want to get a double? And remember, a double is a variable, a numeric variable that can have a decimal place. I'm going to comment out this business up here because we know it works, so we don't need to do anything more with it. System out println type a decimal number. We're prompting the user for a decimal number. We're creating a variable named d of type double, and we're using the next double method to accept input from the user. Then we're printing out utyped plus d, concatenating the resulting number to this text. Let's compile it and let's run it. Okay, so looking for a decimal number, we're going to put in 3.1. It liked it. It liked it just fine. Let's run it again. How about 0.001? Now notice that when I have a decimal number with a lot of decimal places, it puts out the result in scientific notation. This is just, there's a way to prevent that from happening, but this is the default that Java uses. So let's run it again, and we'll put in a simpler decimal number, 0.1. Okay, so 0.1 it types out as 0.1, but when we put in 0.00001, it put out the result in scientific notation. And finally, we will try a negative number. How about negative 312 and 0.45? Oh, I didn't make it negative. Program did the right thing. Bad user input. Minus 555.55, and it gets negative. Okay, so let's comment out all the comments, take away all the comments that we put in to re-enable all this code up here. Bring that line up just to be neat. We'll re-enable this. Okay, so now all of our code is functioning again. Everything right down to the bottom. I'm going to save that. I'm going to compile it. And I'm going to run it. Okay, now it's asking for a word, asking for a single character, asking for an integer, asking for a decimal number. And it all worked. So there you have it. We've got 4 different variable types. We're reading in from the user the appropriate data for each data type. And that does it for today. Thank you very much.